States debate the best way to prevent a major outbreak of Ebola on U.S.
What we're seeing here is a healthcare system that itself has been infected by the Ebola virus and is on the verge of shutting down.
Sierra Leone. My mother is there right now, my brother is there, my grandmother and countless other loved ones are there living through this Ebola nightmare at present.
You should have no concerns about Ebola at all, none, I promise. Unless a medical professional has contacted you and told you of some sort of possible exposure, fear not. Do not listen to the hysterical voices on the radio and the television or read the fear-provoking words online. The people who say and write hysterical things are being very irresponsible.
That was not just another trailer for a zombie movie, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the show today. I'm your host, and we're gonna have some special guests today to talk about Ebola. Is it a viral disease that is going on around the world and spreading out very, very quickly? Here we have Dr. Lulu Kamashari from Cambridge to talk to us about some of the conspiracy theories that have been around the U.S.
Hi everyone, but please just call me Lulu.
Okay, Dr. Lulu.
Nice
So
to
tell
meet you.
me, what are some of the conspiracy theories that you have studied and what are they?
So Ebola was introduced into West African countries for the end goal of getting troops into places like Nigeria, Liberia, and Sierra Leone. For example, we needed troops to get into Nigeria to steal their oil reserves. We needed American troops to get into Sierra Leone to get control of their diamond trade. And that's okay, but it would have been a little too fishy if we had a lot of campaigns to get American troops into these countries altogether. So something like Ebola, a deadly virus, gives us a reason, gives Americans and Africans a reason for us to go into these West African countries all together without it seeming sketchy or kind of mysterious. So
That sounds like when we have the war in Iraq, isn't it?
Exactly.
So that's your argument that the U.S. are sending troops over there and to battle the disease, to exploit the oil and diamond that existing in Africa.
Correct. But
So,
in addition, troops are also being sent in to force vaccinations into the African population. So Ebola itself doesn't really exist, which is, I know it's a shocking fact, but the American Red Cross goes there and gives vaccinations to people in West Africa, and it kind of acts like a poison that gives symptoms of Ebola. That gives the physical appearance of Ebola, which makes the idea of Ebola spread throughout. So, and then there are some Africans who they've understood that the American government is playing with them. So they say, no, we don't want to take this vaccination, but more troops are being sent in to force vaccinations into those Africans who are not foolish enough to take them willingly. So there's another reason.
So the Red Cross and the armies are forcing the people in Africa to take the vaccinations, and therefore the disease are spreading. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so the vaccination isn't really a vaccination to prevent Ebola. It's actually a poison to spread the symptoms of Ebola.
So you mentioned that you have some pictures to show us today. So here we go, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Kamashari's pictures.
Alright, so here's the first one that was taken. So Ebola is staged just like this picture. You can see a woman to the left. The same woman who is seen standing up with a smiling friend, the one with the stainless steel pot on her head, is seen right here, acting as if she's sick. Here, notice the red shirt and the multicolored skirt and the black purse. So why is it that this woman is standing up all giddy and happy in this picture, but another, she is pretending as though she is sick? Because Ebola is staged. Also, the actors in the background to the right appear to be smiling. Isn't that kind of ironic that this dude here is smiling in the middle of an Ebola outbreak, a deadly virus? Why? Because Ebola is staged. So,
Tell me about the footage that you put up for us today, Dr. Kamashari.
I actually brought in two for you and your viewers. So the first one, let's go ahead and play it. So, if you look at this footage, everyone in this footage is protected by a hazmat suit because, of course, Americans say that Ebola is a deadly airborne disease, right?
Right, correct.
But why is this man here wearing plain clothes while transporting an Ebola patient?
Mm-hmm.
Because he forgot the cameras were rolling, because Ebola is not real, because Ebola is a conspiracy, because Ebola is staged. And I have one more footage to show you, which proves the same. So, in this video, you can see that they are obviously acting for the camera. The little boy here, he's walking perfectly fine, and it looks like he received orders from someone else who was filming him to lay down and act like he was sick. So it goes without saying that Ebola is fabricated and it's a conspiracy by the American government.
Thank you for having you on the show, Dr. Lulu. We really appreciate your presence today.
Oh, thank you. It was great being here, and I'm glad that I could tell the American citizens Ebola is not real.
All right, that's what you heard from Dr. Lulu, ladies and gentlemen. Now we'll be taking a short commercial break, and when we be back, we will have two special guests to talk about more Ebola. Welcome back from the commercial break, everyone. We have here two special guests with us to talk about Ebola. Dr. Mordekaiser graduated from Harvard University, Yale University, and MIT University with a PhD. Now we have Dr. Dennis sitting next to him.
Wait, call me Dr. Choo Choo.
You got it, Dr. Choo Choo. She graduated at 16 years old with a PhD. What an impressive achievement, everyone. So, Dr. Mordekaiser, talk to me about what is the nature of Ebola.
So, the Ebola virus is actually one of 5 types of Ebola virus. And these viruses are all part of the Filoviridae family. And these viruses tend to actually go inside of their host cells and form inside of their cytoplasm. So from there, that's where they actually start replicating themselves. And so these viruses all are in charge of, causing this type of hemorrhagic fever, which causes a lot of different symptoms, such as like internal bleeding and very high fevers. So it's a very deadly virus.
So you talk about Filoviridae.
Yes.
Could you explain Filoviridae?
Yes.
Could you explain more about it to the audience, please?
Sure. So this is actually a combination of 2 Latin terms. The first term is from filum, which actually means rod or thread-like, to describe kind of the shape of Ebola, as you can see in this picture here. Also, the second part, viridae, is from the Latin for virus, which stands for poisonous or venomous.
Mm-hmm. So we have seen a lot of footage of people dying and suffering on the bed. So can you tell us what are some of the symptoms of Ebola that easily to detect?
So Ebola is actually categorized as a biosafety level 4 disease. So this means that it's one of the most dangerous kinds of diseases, and it actually does not have a cure yet. So what this virus causes is a type of viral hemorrhagic fever, and this fever is associated with a variety of different, kind of deadly symptoms.
Okay.
So the first initial symptoms, you usually get fatigue, dizziness, and kind of like a lack of strength overall. So it's very hard to detect at first because these could be true for a lot of different diseases. So later on in the during the viral fever process, you start to get more symptoms like internal and external bleeding from your different ports located on your body, and also you're at risk of shock or even kidney failures if it gets really bad.
So it seems that Ebola has similar symptoms to regular flus that everyone has every year. But how is it spreading so fast? Can you explain more?
Yeah. So Ebola is actually indeed a type of virus. So what this means is that it actually uses its individual variants to actually abduct host cells. So when a person is contracted with Ebola, those particles of the virus, those virions, are actually going through the person and looking for host cells to take over. So these virions actually attach to the host cells using their glycoprotein nodes, which are just like on the outer structure of the virions, and then they start to actually get merged inside of the cell. So once these particles of the virus are actually merged inside of the cell, they actually start to release their own genetic information, and that in turn takes over the cell's different organelles. So once this is done, the cell kind of becomes like the virus's own factory for creating more of itself, multiplying. So once the particle of the virus actually takes over the cell fully, it's able to replicate itself and produce more of itself, which in turn go out and infect different cells.
So it's like the ripple effect that it's started from one cell and spread out to every cells in the victim's body.
Exactly.
Okay, so I want to ask you a question, Dr. Choo-Choos. When was Ebola first seen as an epidemic?
Well, it actually began in March of this year, 2014. It began to seem as an epidemic, but no other countries really acted upon it until August of 2014. That's when more countries were spread to the disease. Therefore, more countries began to act on it, and the World Health Organization then decided to make it a public health emergency and act on it.
So where was it originally found?
In 1976, it was first found in West Africa, and it was mainly found around the Congo River and the Ebola River, hence the name Ebola virus. And some researchers believe that the causes to Ebola were actually related to the climate changes and environmental changes on around the Ebola River.
Dr. Dennis, why didn't any country try to stop the disease at the initial stage?
Well, at first, when it was first found in 1976, it wasn't a big deal because it was only found in Africa. So not many other countries really cared at the moment. So because of that, nobody really acted upon it or attempted to cure the disease. However, when the outbreak in 2014, when it began to spread to other countries, that's when the World Health Organization decided to name it a public health emergency and actually do something about it. So other countries actually wanted to stop it from spreading into their own countries.
So as a data analysis, can you tell us the statistic, like how many cases that have been found in the world, all over the world, in Africa or the area you study?
Yes. So the main three countries that it was found in was Guinea, Liberia, and Sierra Leone. And in the entire continent of Africa, there was 17,933 cases. However, only 6,382 people have died from it. And in the whole world, well, the cases in Africa account for the majority of cases in the world. So the other cases all around the world, there have been 17,938 cases all around the world and 6,383 people in the world who have died from it. So you could say that only one person outside of Africa has died from Ebola. So outside of Africa, there have actually only been 5 other cases and only one person has actually died from Ebola outside of Africa.
So the person that died, was he die in America?
Yes, that was the one U.S. American that did die from Ebola.
So this disease has spread to the Western. It has already been in Africa, now it's in the Western, especially in the U.S.
Yes.
So as we can see from our specialists, that Ebola is a serious disease that need to be stopped, otherwise it's gonna become a serious issues for mankind. Thank you for being on the show, doctors. My name is Hui, and this is the World War II shows. Thank you for tuning in. Welcome back from the break, ladies and gentlemen. We are here with Dr. Mackenzie from George Mason University. How are you, doctor?
I'm doing great. How about you, man?
I'm well, thank you.
Great.
So what is the effect of Ebola on the U.S. economy?
On the U.S. economy, the Ebola virus disease has a tremendous impact on the U.S. Economy. The U.S. government spends billions and billions of money in combating the Ebola virus disease each year. You know, let's take this year for example. this year, the U.S. government spent more than $1 billion in combating the Ebola epidemic disease, both locally and globally, which is a huge sums of money. Yeah, so whenever this government or the U.S. government spend huge sums of money in combating this disease, what happens here is that it increases government spending. And whenever there's an increase in government spending, what happens? There's a potential increase in the federal deficit.
Right.
And of course, when there's an increase in the federal deficit, it can potentially increase the national debt. When there's an increase in the national debt, what happens here is the high unemployment, and you hear people complaining, there's no jobs and all of that. And of course, high inflation can come in and all of that. So the Ebola virus disease has a very big impact on the U.S. economy.
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
But what do you think gonna happen to the countries in Africa, especially in West Africa?
Yes. So like the Ebola disease, one thing is again it's a global it's a global epidemic. It doesn't only affect the U.S. It also affects those affected countries. Let's take a country in West Africa like a country like Sierra Leone. This year the epidemic depreciated or devalued the economy by 30%, which is a very huge number here, ladies and gentlemen. It's a very huge number. Whenever there's a depreciation in the economy, people tend to travel a lot. There's an increase in migration. People gonna get out from the country because of course the economy.
Right.
So whenever people travel through the country, outside of travel,
they bring a disease.
Yeah, they bring the disease. They spread the disease easily throughout the globe.
Correct.
So again, it has a very big impact on those countries, and of course it leads to poverty, the increase in poverty, and all those stuff. So it has a very tremendous impact on those countries.
So what are some of the social impacts that the country that had Ebola have?
Yeah, so Ebola again, it has a tremendous social impact in affected countries, those countries like Liberia, Sierra Leone, and of course Guinea. So according to the United Nations Children's Fund, the Ebola virus disease has a tremendous psychological, social impact on children. And of course the number of children who have died as a result, the vulnerable who have died as a result of this, it's pretty huge here. Let's pick a country like Liberia. Children account for nearly 22% of deaths in that country, which is a very huge number here. It's a very huge number. The children, the innocent ones, the effects of this disease on the innocent one is tremendous right here. So again, the Ebola disease, when it comes to the social impact on these children, is very huge here. And of course, the stigmatic effect, like the stereotypic effect of the Ebola. We're looking at black people again are the victims here. I had a personal story that I'll just make it short here. That I just wanted to share.
Okay.
One time I went to a restaurant, and this was I think 2 weeks ago, and I went to a restaurant, and it was like this food lady. The cashier that I was, talking to, he was like, "Are you from Sierra Leone?" And I was like, "Do I look like someone from Sierra Leone?" That thing, that's kind of stigma, that kind of...
Yeah, that's stigma.
The stigma, the mindset, like, people from, the black people, where influenced, like, it's really influenced by the way you speak, like, because I have this accent,
Okay.
So, whenever I talk to people, they're like, "Are you from Sierra Leone? If you're from Sierra Leone, we better stay away from you." You know what I'm saying?
Oh.
Like, they kind of
So they were...
pull you away because, they don't want to get a disease. You know what I'm saying? So, like, the stigmatic effect, they kind of discriminate against you just because maybe you come from a country in West Africa. So they think that, hey, oh man, he must have the disease. So we better stay. So the stigmatic effect, the discrimination here is pretty huge here. So the social effect has a very, very big impact.
All right. That's really, really a sad story. Thank you for sharing it to us. We really appreciate it.
Man, it was a pleasure meeting you, man.
Nice to meet you. Nice to have you on the show. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome.
Dr. Mackenzie, everyone's from George Mason Universities.